standards, per capita income, and achieve the target set by the Honorable Prime Minister, Shri Narendra Modi, of becoming a $5 trillion economy by 2024, it is essential we address the challenges facing the Indian farmer. Availability of arable land, degradation of soil, and minimum income are some of the challenges they face. I thank Professor Swaminathan, who could not be here today, who is recognized as the father of the Green Revolution, for his message. Rio Tinto played its part in ushering in the Green Revolution in the mid-60s. We have been a partner to the Indian farmer since 1965, when we were the first company to commercially supply borate products in India through a JV arrangement. For over 50 years, Rio Tinto has remained committed to the Indian market and Indian farmers. We are completely aligned with the government's objective of introducing value-added products to Indian farmers and doubling farmers' income. Increased yield and multi-crop farming will be a catalyst in achieving this objective. When we correct a micronutrient deficiency, the return is highly profitable for farmers. The fertilizer industry must take the lead in incorporating zinc and boron in their fertilizers. Doubling farm income using balanced crop nutrition is possible, but joint collaborations between raw material suppliers, fertilizer industry, wholesalers, and retailers must be implemented. To this end, we have been working with our stakeholders, the Ministry of Agriculture, Government of India, trade and technical bodies, the Fertilizer Association of India, Indian Soil Science, and International Crop Research Institute for Semi-Arid Tropics over the last few decades to ensure that Indian farmers are not only aware of the micronutrient deficiencies, but also have access to world-class boron products. The future will be secured by exploring synergistic opportunities. This summit is a classic example of how two unrelated entities, the International Zinc Association and Rio Tinto, can be force multipliers when they come together. I would like to thank Dr. Andrew Green, Executive Director, IZA USA, for this collaboration and his presence here today. I thank Dr. Ashok Dalwai, CEO, NRAI, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Government of India, for gracing the occasion. I would also like to thank Mr. Satish Chandar, Director General, Fertilizer Association of India, and Mr. Ajay Kakra, Executive Director, PwC India. An event like this requires meticulous planning, and I would like to thank the teams from the FAI and IZA for their untiring efforts in making this possible. There are many valuable technical and policy sessions scheduled over the next day and a half, and I thank all the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, once again thanking the Honorable Minister and our distinguished dignitaries on the desk, we close the proceedings of the inaugural session. And let's once again put our hands together for our Honorable Minister for being here with us, for his words of encouragement and commitment towards the agriculture sector. Thank you once again, sir. And ladies and gentlemen, we shall now break for tea. The tea break will be of 20 minutes only. We will commence with the proceedings of the next session, which is Technical Session 1 at 11:45. Kindly be seated before that. Thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are ready to commence with the proceedings of Technical Session 1. And I have the proud privilege in inviting on stage Our distinguished chairman for the session, Dr. Ashok Dalwai, IS, CEO, NRAI, Ministry of Agriculture and Farmers Welfare, Government of India. Let's put our hands together to welcome our chairman of this session. And I would request Dr. Andrew Green, Executive Director, IZA USA, to kindly do the honors of welcoming and felicitating our Technical Session 1 Chairman, Dr. Ashok Dalwai, with a floral bouquet and a shawl.
Join us.
Once again, a very warm welcome to you, sir, as our distinguished session chair. And thank you, Dr. Green, for doing the honors. I would request Dr. Andrew Green to kindly grace the stage. Also inviting eminent speakers of this session, Dr. Clayton de Siqueira. He is Global Market Development Manager, Agriculture, Rio Tinto, Boratus, USA. A very warm welcome to you. Inviting our eminent speaker, Dr. Akriti Gupta, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. A very warm welcome to you, ma'am. So, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with the proceedings of Technical Session 1, we would like to play once again the complete message from Professor M.S. Swaminathan. Earlier, due to the constraint of time, the minister had to go for another important meeting. We could not play the complete message from Professor M.S. Swaminathan. So now we shall have the message from Professor M.S. Swaminathan in conversation with Dr. Soumitra Das.
4 to 5 major components. The first is the whole area of calorie deficiency, which as I already mentioned, today in our country it can be overcome by the effective implementation of the Food Security Act. The second area of protein hunger, fortunately pulses production is going up, and we have been emphasizing to government that pulses should be included in the public distribution system. Otherwise there are eggs. In fact, most of the schools today give eggs to children. Tamil Nadu gives 2 eggs per week, and so on, and also the fishes. The third aspect of micronutrient deficiency is becoming now very important, because iron, iodine, zinc, vitamin A, vitamin B12, all these aspects of micronutrient, they require small quantities, but they can have a large impact on health. For example, vitamin A deficiency leads to blindness, which we now recognize. How do you overcome the problem of micronutrient deficiency? Micronutrients are required, as the word indicates, small quantities are needed. Otherwise, what you can do is marry agriculture and nutrition together. What we call, we have been promoting from the center a series of nutrition gardens where whichever micronutrients are deficient, they are provided. You can have sweet potato for vitamin A. There are very high vitamin A rich sweet potatoes that are available. The normal, what they call Tamil Nadu moringa, is so rich in nutrients, micronutrients. So, therefore, we can overcome the problem of calorie deficiency, protein deficiency, and hidden hunger, macronutrient deficiency. The Indian Council of Medical Research also emphasizes very much on the health aspect of nutrition. Nutrition and health, now people know. We have got a program here for 2 important diseases. One is leprosy, the other is tuberculosis. In both cases, nutrition is very important, combined with aspect. So the Micronutrient Summit, the Global Micronutrient Summit, as I said, is a very timely one. Although we now realize the importance of micronutrients, operationally how do you do it? How do you ensure? You can ensure calories, you can ensure protein, but how do you also ensure micronutrients? This is where I think this particular summit It's timely one. Awareness is important. Awareness has come, but then what's the next step? How do you operationalize it at the field level so that millions of children today who are going partially blind can be saved by simple methods like giving some sweet potato rich in vitamin A. I once again want to congratulate the organizers, the International Zinc Association, and Dr. Das yourself, and all those connected with this initiative. I'm sorry my health doesn't permit to be present personally, but I wish the conference great success. And from the center here, in our own center in Madras, where we have placed considerable emphasis on micronutrient, we will be happy to implement the major recommendations of the summit.
Thank you very much indeed. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank Professor M. Swaminathan for his words of encouragement. He's always been a source of inspiration, working till date, this age, this health, for the progress of the agriculture sector. And now I once again welcome each one of you to Technical Session 1. The time duration for the session is approximately 1 hour 20 minutes, which includes the opening and closing remarks by the distinguished chairperson, presentations or addresses by all our eminent speakers for about 25 minutes each, and we will have question and answers at the end after all the presentations are over. But before I hand over to our distinguished chairperson, I have the proud privilege of introducing him. Our chairperson for the session, Dr. Ashok Dalwai, is an IAS officer of the 1984 batch, Odisha cadre, hailing from the state of Karnataka. He is a postgraduate in agriculture economics and doctorate in economics. He has served in the states of Odisha and Karnataka and also the Government of India in several capacities encompassing agriculture, rural and tribal development, water resources industry, urban development and technology management. His dedicated service in the backward regions of Odisha, combined with sensitive positions at the state and national level, has enriched his outlook. All through his career, he has focused on simplification of procedures, doorstep delivery of services and reforms. In Government of India, he has served as Deputy Director General, UIDAI, for 5 long years since the year 2015. Has been serving in the Department of Agriculture Cooperation and Farmers Welfare, Government of India, and has contributed to several reforms. He has been tasked to serve as chairman of several committees to initiate reforms and formulate new policies. Some of these include chairman of Inter-Ministerial Committee for recommending strategy for doubling farmers' income by 2022, chairman of the Committee on Drafting a Model Marketing Act, and chairman of the Committee to draft a Model Contract Farming Act. Dr. Dalwai is currently serving as Chief Executive Officer, National Rainfed Area Authority, in the rank of Secretary to the Government of India. With those words of introduction, ladies and gentlemen, I hand over to our distinguished chairman of this session, Dr. Ashok Dalwai. Over to you, sir, for your opening remarks and to carry forward the proceedings of the session. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together to welcome.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much, ma'am, for your kind words. And first, let me wish all of us sitting here a happy Teachers' Day. We are all gathered here for teaching one another. More importantly, for those delegates from outside the country, a bit of information that the Teachers' Day is celebrated in India every year on 5th of September on the occasion of the birthday of a great teacher and philosopher, as also one of the past presidents of our country, Sir Radhakrishnan. He's the one who has dwelled very deeply into the Hindu philosophy, as also other philosophies, and made very vast and rich commentaries on the Upanishads, and of course, other treatises of Indian philosophy. So it is in his honor that we celebrate today as a Teacher's Day. He was a very great teacher in the University of Mysore and also in Tamil Nadu. I won't take much time because we have three distinguished speakers here who are going to make a presentation. I will take 2 minutes only to contextualize what they are going to discuss about the effect of the micronutrients on human health, animal health, and crop productivity. And there is always an organic link among these factors. We must remember that everything ultimately depends upon soils and the soil ecology and soil environment. In the Indian context, we have broadly 3 major soil types, and they would impact the nutrient status. The major soils consist of the alluvial soils, almost accounting for 64%. And the next important soil category is the red soils, which account for about 13%. And thereafter, the black cotton soils, which account for about 9%. We have 3 to 4 other soil types, which are small percentage. For example, laterite soils, lateritic soils, desert soils. But India has a cafeteria of soils. And each soil type must be understood to ensure that we are making management of soils appropriately. For example, the alluvial soils. We know that they lack organic carbon. Organic carbon is very important ultimately in soil management, soil health management. They're also poor in nitrogen. Red soils have their own typical constraints. They're particularly deficient in micronutrients. There's also the secondary nutrient, namely sulfur. Black soils, their main problem is drainage. And drainage has association with nutrient leaching, and therefore it also impacts the nutrient management. We need therefore to keep in mind the type of soil in which we are going to practice agriculture. Now the second point I would like to drive home is that over the last 70 years in India, the use of agrochemicals has increased. For example, the nitrogen, let's say, the per capita consumption was 0.49 kg per hectare. Not per capita, per hectare, which has now gone up to 137 kgs per hectare. NPK. We normally tend to blame agrochemicals for the ills that has been left on the soils, soil toxicity, or the decrease in the microbial activity, or the decrease in the organic carbon. I think we should be extremely balanced in our approach to examining the impact of the agrochemicals also. Many a time, the ill effects are because we do not practice scientific, evidence-based, rational usage of these nutrients. The soil requires these nutrients if it has to sustain a particular crop productivity, animal productivity, and on a sustainable basis. If organic carbon is very important in soils to maintain soil structure, to ensure soil fertility, and serve the purpose of promoting the biological activities, the implication is that we should be balanced in our usage of agrochemicals and organic manures. We can't do it at the cost of each other. So rather than put the blame on one particular nutrient and then start going the other extreme and leave the ill effects of that after a few years, we should be making corrections for scientific and evidence-based soil health management. That is another point that, as we discuss micronutrients, we should keep in mind. The third point is, so far as micronutrients in India is concerned, both micro and macro, the status of the nutrient in India has changed. In 1951, for example, we started with the belief that, not belief, it was evidence-based, that Indian soils are by and large deficient of nitrogen, therefore we needed to add more of external sources of nitrogen. Whereas P and K, we always thought were adequate. But today, after extractive practice of agriculture, since Green Revolutions in 1960s, we are now left with a situation where Indian soils are also deficient in potassium and phosphates. So we need to therefore ensure that NPK, the principle of the major micronutrients, are taken care of appropriately. Now, large number of areas in our country, because of the second generation problems arising from Green Revolution, have also become deficient in secondary and micronutrients. Now, we thought, for example, that boron, they are deficient only in certain areas like core soils, where generally the oil seeds were grown. What we now see is that boron deficiency is actually expanded beyond those regions and has got into, for example, even red soils. Likewise, the zinc. The zinc, we thought it was limited to certain areas, but then the soil survey now shows that its expansion is beyond the traditional areas. The advantage that India has today over the last 50 years is that we have gradually moved up to more site-specific soil analysis, and therefore we have a very rich database which I think we should make use of. When we started in 1950s, our soil survey, we did not have site specificity. But then we moved up where GIS-based mapping of soil survey has been done, and therefore we got better latitude and longitude or coordinates of from where the soils are being collected, samples are being collected, and what is the nutrient status. But the best thing is that under the AICRP, ICAR has now mapped more than 500 districts through the Indian Institute of Soil Science, Bhopal. And in case of 500 districts out of 700, we have total status of the micronutrients. I think we should make use of that. The fourth most important progress that has happened in India is the universal soil health card system. Now, based on a certain pattern, every single farm household in India has got a soil health card which talks about the status in respect of 12 parameters. 3 major nutrients, 1 secondary nutrient, 5 micronutrients, organic carbon, and 2 physico-chemical properties, pH and EC. So in respect of 12 parameters, we have a total database. What is really important is to subject that now to data analytics and make a sense of the nutrient status of India, and then see how we can start promoting balanced nutrient management. So micronutrients, all of us are aware, are very important because it also adds to the efficient use of the macro and the secondary nutrients, apart from positively impacting the quality of the food that is produced, and therefore a positive yield on the human health and the animal health. So there is a virtuous cycle that we can ultimately establish from soils to the human life, the animal life, and back to the soils. So there's so much that we can all learn about, and we will look forward to the 3 presentations. What we will do is I'll request our 3 presenters here to take 15 minutes each to make a presentation, so that we have a few minutes left at the end of it for you to ask questions and make commentaries. And I think that will give us all a benefit in terms of arriving at proper recommendations that can be shared with the government for follow-up. Thank you. So, now let me first request Dr. Andrew Green, who will come and speak to us on zinc in food and nutrition security. Dr. Green.
Namaste.
Namaste.
Let's try one more time. Namaste.
Namaste.
That's about all the words of Hindi I know, so I like to say it often. So I'm very happy to be with you today. I've been coming to India for the past, I think, 11 years, talking about zinc, talking about nutrition security, food security. And it gives me great pleasure to be with you now. I think having a great story to tell with regard to what has happened here in India and what has happened globally, so I'll be sharing that with you in the next series of slides. This is just a brief outline for my presentation. I'll be talking initially about zinc and health, and I know one of our presenters today will be touching on that in a lot more depth, but I just want to mention a few key aspects related to zinc and health. I'll then talk about zinc and crops, looking at food productivity, nutrition security, and so forth. And then I'll finish off talking about what our organization, the International Zinc Association, has been doing around the world to help promote the use of zinc in fertilizers, but also here in India. So just very briefly on zinc and health, I could spend all day actually talking about these aspects, and I look forward to one of the other presenters touching on this as well. But you can see here the items, just a few of the items actually that zinc can affect, going everywhere from dermatitis type situations to mortality. And that brings me to this slide, which touches on not just zinc impacts on health, but also micronutrients. And I think it's absolutely essential that we all recognize that micronutrients, including zinc, boron, and others, have a tremendous impact, not just on crop productivity, but upon economical aspects such as GDP. I think that's a very shocking number here, showing the percent level of GDP that's impacted by the micronutrient deficiencies. And that's both from the food production side, it's also from the health production side. There's been work done by the Copenhagen Consensus, which is a group of world-leading economists. 5 or 6 have won the Nobel Award, and they identified micronutrient deficiencies, including zinc, as one of the top issues that should be dealt with to improve GDP, to improve economic status, and so forth. So it is a critical issue for us to be addressing here today, talking about not just zinc, but boron and the rest of the micronutrients to ensure that we provide a balanced fertilizer approach and a balanced impact on health. If you've seen me speak before, you've seen me present these numbers. I always like to show these in almost every talk I give. And I think it's because they're so shocking in terms of the impact they have on a global basis with regards to zinc and health. So about 1/3 of the world's population is known to be zinc deficient. About 800,000 people of all ages die from zinc-related deficiencies. And I think the most critical number here is the fact that of those 800,000 people, 450,000 are children under the age of 5 that die from zinc-related deficiencies. These would be things like diarrhea, pneumonia, and so forth. And I think what's most problematic from my standpoint is this is a global issue that we can address. There are a number of solutions that can be done to address this. It's just that there's not the awareness that's required. And I think in the last 5 years, 10 years maybe, we've seen an increased recognition about this issue. But it's something that we collectively, all of us here in this group and outside, need to push on and make sure that we correct. One of the things that my organization has done in recent years is to launch the Zinc Saves Kids campaign with UNICEF. We were the first organization from the extractive industry, from the mining industry, that UNICEF agreed to work with. And it took about a year of talking with them, showing them our information, showing them how the zinc industry and our members operate in a sustainable manner, to when they finally agreed that this would be a good program to launch. This was first done in 2 different countries, Nepal and Peru. The zinc industry put in about $3 million into this initiative at the beginning stages. And the goal here obviously was to address the zinc deficiencies, improve child survival rates, improve productivity, health, and so forth amongst the children. And I'm happy to say the early programs with UNICEF went tremendous. We did save thousands and thousands of children's lives through a very comprehensive approach, looking at addressing zinc deficiency, educating the families, the doctors, the pharmacists about how critical zinc deficiency is. And we've gone on to expand that. In fact, we have a program now in Mexico that's been going on for the last 2.5 years. It was one of those initiatives or partnerships with UNICEF where the initial project was 3 years, and after working with IZA and our members, UNICEF came back at the end of the 3 years and saying that they wanted to work with us longer. And now it's become a 8-year, 9-year type of partnership, and we plan to continue that even further. So it's been a great program for us, and one that we hope to expand even further going into the future. And this is what I like to call the zinc industry health footprint. This just shows, again, when we started the program with UNICEF, we were only working in 2 countries. And now we have projects going on in these countries that are highlighted here, specifically focused on zinc and health. We've got a number of our members mentioned here that have undertaken activities to help address zinc and health, including Hindustan Zinc here in India. And it's just, I think, a phenomenal story about recognizing social responsibility and recognizing that we are the zinc industry. There's a zinc problem, a zinc deficiency problem that we can collectively help address, and the zinc industry has stepped up to help make an impact here. And one additional thing I wanted to highlight here in India specifically is based on the work that's been done with UNICEF, based on the recognition by the World Health Organization and other groups, I'm very happy that India has now recognized the critical nature of zinc and RS to address zinc deficiency, but also diarrhea. It's been a problem both here in India and around the world where the awareness of the impact that zinc and RS can have in treating diarrhea is not recognized, is not known by the medical professionals and so forth. And as a result, the families that go to the doctors, that go to the pharmacists, typically get prescribed the wrong medicine. They get prescribed expensive antibiotics wherein a lot of cases, the simple solution of giving them ORS and zinc together is the best. And it's actually the #1 recommendation by the World Health Organization and UNICEF to initially address diarrhea. So now India has a new program pushed by the government where they provide the zinc ORS to children that are suffering from this free of charge. I think it's a fantastic program and one that I would like to see replicated in other parts of the world. So, moving now from soils, or from health into soils, clearly there is a connection. The map on the left was, this is an old map that was done by Dr. Brian Alloway, but it's one that I like to show because Dr. Alloway has been a key player with us, partnering and promoting the awareness about zinc deficiency. The map shows the highlighted areas where you have zinc deficiency in soils. The map on the right was done by Dr. Black, who is one of the leading experts on zinc deficiency in humans. He is the one that has come up with the publication estimating the 450,000 children under the age of 5 dying from zinc deficiency. And if you look at the areas that are highlighted for zinc deficiency in soils on the left map, and the areas highlighted for zinc deficiency on the right, they match almost 1-to-1, which makes sense. If you're growing up in an area that has zinc deficiency in soils, you're not going to get sufficient zinc into your crops. You're not going to have zinc. You're not going to have proper zinc in your food, and therefore you're not going to have proper zinc in your body. So this is something that we need to do to address, to combat, and it has a multitude of impacts positively for health, for food security, and so forth. So next couple slides, I'll be touching on what can be done to address this, to get more zinc into the crops, to help improve food security as well as the health aspects. I think most of you know these key points. I'm not going to read them all, but I think one of the key ones, of course, is that based on a study done by FNO, the Food and Agricultural Organization from the UN, they identified about 50% of the world's agronomic soils being deficient in zinc. In addition, zinc has been identified as the #1 micronutrient deficiency. So clearly, the information, the science tells us that it is a critical issue that has to be addressed. And they say a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here's 4,000 words, but I could show you thousands of pictures like this from all over the world showing the impacts of zinc deficiency, where you have no zinc and the crops are not growing well, to where you have zinc added and the crops are growing extremely well. Just a little bit of data. I promise not to get too much into the numbers here, but I think it's important to recognize when we're talking about adding zinc as a fertilizer, this can be done as zinc sulfate, as zinc oxide. Typically it's done in blending it with other fertilizers, and that's an approach that we certainly encourage. Again, I think one of the key points coming out from this conference is the need to do a balanced fertilizer approach. That means NPK, that means zinc, that means boron, that means other nutrients where needed. So you have to identify what are the right nutrients to be added, when do you need to add them, where do you add them, what are the right doses to add, and so forth. But what this slide shows you is if you just have nitrogen, you have a certain level of productivity in the crop. If you add P and K, you get increased levels of productivity. And when you add zinc to the NPK, you get the highest amount of productivity. So there's always a limiting factor, and zinc can be a limiting factor in a lot of places where only NPK is being added, or just nitrogen, for example. So I think one of the themes that we have to come away with today is you have to look at the balanced fertilizer approach, making sure that you're addressing deficiencies, not just for NPK, but also for zinc and other micronutrients. Oh. Okay. User error. I think this is one of my favorite slides, and I can show you information like this for other parts of the world. This one comes from India. But when you're trying to convince farmers about the impact that zinc can have for them, trying to get them to make a sometimes very risky change from what they've been doing all their lives, what their fathers were doing before them, their grandfathers before them, it's absolutely critical to recognize the cost benefit of this. Why should a farmer undertake a change when they don't know what's going to happen? Why is this going to benefit them? And so whenever possible, we always try and generate information like this showing the cost-benefit analysis. And you can see here, this is published work done in India, and it shows for the various applications of zinc that were used, you see a tremendous cost-benefit ratio for the farmer, going up from 1 rupee, for example, providing anywhere from $45 in return, or 45 rupees, all the way up to 96. And I've done the same thing, we've seen the same thing in terms of economic impact of using zinc in Turkey, in the Congo, in the US, in Canada, in Mexico, Brazil, you name it. You see these types of very high levels of cost-benefit ratios. So there's no question, where you have zinc deficiency, the farmer will reap a benefit, they will see more income, they will grow more food. So all these things I think are critical in encouraging, promoting the use of zinc. And touching on nutritional status, again, I don't want to spend a lot of time with the numbers, but I did just want to show you one slide that shows the impact, not just on food security, on improving crop production, but also the impact that adding zinc as fertilizer can have on nutrition. This is work that we've done with the Ministry of Agriculture in China. And you can see here, when zinc sulfate was added to the different applications, you see an increase of about 20 to 25% in terms of the zinc nutritional level in the food. And this is critical. This is, actually I'm going to come back to this later on a slide for China, but this is very important to the government groups that are focusing on not just food security, but also nutrition security, because it has a long-lasting impact on health in the end. And finally, I wanted to just touch on what IZA, our organization, is doing to help address these issues I've just touched on for health in crops. So, I think first it's important to recognize that IZA is a small nonprofit organization. We have limited resources, but I think we have quality resources, not quantity, but quality resources. So you can see here, I don't know if there's a pointer. Well, I'll just use my finger. This is Dr. Dash right here. This is Rolla Sharma. This is other members of our team. No, that's okay. Sometimes it's better not to use technology. The point of this slide and showing the few people here is we are a small group, but we have tried to do as much as we can impacting in these different countries, especially India, on where we can have joint activities. So Dr. Das, who I think everyone knows, has done a tremendous job in helping to organize this conference. Dr. Das cannot do this alone in India. We can't do it alone in China or the other places. And that's what the rest of this slide is trying to represent is here in India, some of our closest partners have been Satish Chandra and the Fertilizer Association of India. A lot of the fertilizer companies here in the room, Coromandel, IFCO, JG Chemicals, and so forth. This is the only way that we can have the impact that we've done, looking at policy changes, looking at promotional activities, crop trials, and so forth. So I think it's really critical to recognize the formula for success that we've had in these different areas is by partnering with you all to make sure that we can promote these activities together. It's going to change again. This is where we have activities going on in the world. And you can see there's a lot of different countries where we have this work going on. And just in the next few slides, I'll try and touch on these very briefly. Here in India, this was touched upon earlier in the opening remarks. But I think it's important to recognize that the work that ICAR does, Dr. Shukla and his team have done outstanding work to identify the micronutrient deficiencies here in India. You can see here zinc is the highest deficiency, boron is close, second. But the point of this message here is, again, we're not just focused on zinc, we're not just focused on boron, we're really wanting to do an appropriate balanced approach and address all these nutrient deficiencies so that the farmer can maximize their yield, they can maximize the nutritional uptake and so forth. This is another recent map that's been done by ICAR showing the deficiencies of zinc. And what we have seen over the last, I think the previous one was about 10 years ago, it showed actually a decrease on a countrywide basis in India. So that's tremendous. I think that shows the impact that the different activities by FAI, by IZA, by the fertilizer industry has had. But it also showed very high levels of zinc deficiency in certain regions. So in Rajasthan, for example, has the highest level of zinc deficiency, something around 75% deficiency, and I have that on another slide. So what it says is we've had improvement, we've had some impact, but there's a lot more that we need to do to help the farmers of India. Sorry, there's a delay with the slides. I love this slide. I love slides like this for our different activities in India and other parts of the world. And what this shows is the baseline or the early numbers for zinc sulfate in this case being used for fertilizer use. You can see as indicated here on the graph when the ZNI program was started with Dr. Das and others here in India working with FAI. And you can see what has occurred now since we've been working with the overall use of zinc sulfate and fertilizer going up over 200% in that time period, which is just tremendous. And that mainly occurred through policy changes. And I want to give a word of thanks to the government of India for recognizing the need to change these policies to add zinc to the nutrient-based subsidy system, but also for other activities that we've been doing with road shows, with regional programs, and so forth. And the challenges going forward, I just touched upon these briefly in my opening remarks, but I think it is important that we help address some of these remaining policies to help achieve even greater success, greater impact, and again, ultimately to help the farmers of India do balanced fertilizer activities using zinc and other micronutrients. So just very quickly going on into other countries. I'm not going to touch on this. Dr. Akhtar will be talking about the Bangladesh program that the Bangladesh Agricultural Research Institute is doing. So I encourage you to listen to what she says tomorrow with the presentation. I won't touch on this anymore. We have activities going on in Brazil, of course. So here we've been doing a soil deficiency map for zinc, showing about 35% of the soils in Brazil are deficient in zinc. We've also been doing work on a fertilizer seal of approval to help address inappropriate materials being used. In China, we've had a lot of success, like India, and this has again been through partnerships. We've got a memorandum of understanding with the Ministry of Agriculture in China. We just renewed that partnership just 2 days ago. And the impact in terms of the market has been tremendous there as well, with the zinc fertilizer market going up about 60% in the last 7 or 8 years. Another key achievement that just occurred last year was the Ministry of Agriculture has now created a nutrition committee that's focused on improving the uptake of nutrients into food to ensure high levels of nutrition for the people of China. The last thing I want to touch upon in terms of new partnerships is the I think, very exciting new partnership that we have now with World Bank. I think it's tremendous and exciting for us to have this new partnership underway, and I'm very happy to say it's happening right here in India. This has taken a couple years of discussions with World Bank to get this to come about, but we now have crop trials going on in Rajasthan with World Bank, trying to show proof of principle, the impact you can have using zinc fertilizer to increase food production as well as the nutritional uptake. So you can see Dr. Das here in the field. This is already, you can see the impact of the soils where you have deficiency in zinc and where you've added zinc. And we have, in about a couple weeks' time, we have a Farmers' Day program going on with World Bank to assess where we're at with the crop trials going on right now. So it's a very exciting program. And as you all know, World Bank is a leading group investing in improving agronomic practices around the world. They invest just short of $1 billion right now in agronomic programs around the world. So if we can show them through this project the impact that zinc can have on improving food production, this could quickly be taken up in other parts of the world, so it's very exciting. I just wanted to take a moment to thank our affiliate members. We have full members as well from the mining industry, like Hindustan Zinc and others that are key partners working on all the program activities. But for fertilizers, it's people like you here in the room that have helped us partner and achieve a lot of the success we've had. So I did want to take a moment to recognize the companies. A lot of you are sitting here in the room, and my thanks to you for all your support. And I would tell you, if you're a fertilizer company and you don't see your logo up there, please see me after the talk. Talk to Dr. Das. We'd love to work with you. And in conclusion, I'm not going to read each of these bullet points, but hopefully the message has come through loud and clear that, first of all, there is a critical and global issue right now with zinc deficiency impacting human health. I mentioned before, and I'll mention again, 450,000 children under the age of 5 have been identified dying from zinc deficiency. If you look at soils, a similar type of global critical issue where 50% of the world's soils are deficient in zinc. These two things are connected, and we can do something about it. We've had impact in India, we've had impact in China, we've had impact in other parts of the world, but we need to do a lot more, both here in India and the rest of the world. And so I look forward to working with you all, working with our team here in India and elsewhere, so that we can achieve even greater success for the people of India and for the people of the world to help achieve food security and nutritional security. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Green, for your comprehensive light on the zinc issues. So we'll now move on to the next speaker. We will have question answers cumulatively at the end of it. Now it is Dr. Sequeira, who is going to talk about boron, another important one. Unfortunately, there has been a trade-off. You have to take a little less time comparatively to save time. Okay, so that we give some time to the participants. Yeah.
Try to follow Andrew's steps. Namaste.
Thank you.
So hopefully you guys are ready for a Latino accent. I'm from Brazil originally. I've been with Rio Tinto for about 10 months. So I'm here to talk about boron in agriculture, to give you guys an overall view about the importance of boron for crop nutrition. waiting for the presentation. There we go. So I'll monitor my timing here. Okay. So yeah, let's talk about boron then. Okay, just an overview about US Borax, Rio Tinto. Like US Borax, we're part of the Rio Tinto company. We have been in the boron business since 1872. I started in California, the Death Valley. So the 20 mil team comes from the concept that they would take 20 mils to take the boron from the mine to the port. So this is where the 20 mil team comes about. It's a well-recognized brand in a lot of countries. US Borax was bought by Rio Tinto in 1950. This is when Rio Tinto bought US Borax. This is a picture of our mine in California, now in Majova Valley or Majova Desert. It started as a grounded mine. Nowadays is an open pit mine. So you guys can have a sense of what it is, a boron mine over there. If you're able to see the white spots, this is where you're going to find the ore. Usually we'll be mining tinko and kernite. These are the type of boron minerals we have in our mine. We can talk a little bit more about that later if you guys have more interest to know about it. So knowing we don't have too much time here, I want to start talking about boron and plants right away. So boron is, as zinc and a few other micronutrients, is recognized as an essential micronutrient for plants, meaning that without boron and as with zinc, plants will not be able to complete their cycle, they will die, so it's an essential micronutrient. And boron is involved in several key roles inside the plants. Just let me get it. Sometimes we forget we are getting old and we try to fight that, but I need that. So boron, like I said, many people would say, would be calling boron the micronutrient with macro effects. It's just because boron is involved in several key roles inside the plant. One of them is related with cell wall structure. 90% of the boron that the plants uptake will be going to form a cell wall. This is the reason when you usually boron deficiency, we're going to find morphological defects in the plants. It's just because the cell wall is not well developed with deficiency of boron. And it's really related with this kind of linkage over here, as you guys can see. And usually dicotyledones, they would demand more boron than monocotyledones. For instance, if you take a soybean plant and a corn plant, in theory, soybean plants will be demanding more boron than a corn plant or a rice plant. It's just because soybeans, they will have more of this type of linkage in their cell wall structure. So this is one. The other one, really key for having boron, is root growth. And as you guys can see in this graph, the green bar, the green lines represent when boron was well supplied. You can see after a few hours, root relocation is prompt. But the line here in the bottom, like right here in the bottom, this is where we didn't supply boron, and you can see after a few hours, it didn't develop, the root growth wasn't as good as when you had boron applied. And this bar here represents when you took those plants that didn't have boron initially, and we started supplying boron at 11 hours, and you can see after we start supplying boron how root growth has started. So boron is really key for root growth as well. We know calcium, for instance, it's key for root growth as well, and phosphorus, but thinking on the micronutrient perspective, boron is the one for that, for root growth. And meaning root growth is essential for the plants to exploit the soil, right? For water or for other nutrients such as phosphorus and potassium that move by diffusion. And here's just to illustrate, as Andrew said, pictures, they sometimes tell more than words. This is from the Dr. Ismail Chakimaki, and showing for different crops. You can see there canola, soybean, and corns. Without and with boron, you can see the difference in root biomass. It's quite significant. And sometimes the deficiency is expressed earlier on the root growth than on the above ground biomass. As you guys can see, so if you take soybean and corn, for the above ground biomass, you don't see too much of a difference, but you see more of a difference for the root growth. So showing that how important boron it is for root elongation in crops. And another one, talking about pollination, fertilization. Many people know that boron plays a key role there as well. And here, just showing on the left, over here, the length of the pollinic tube, how it is impacted by not having adequate supply of boron. And why is that important? It is important for the set of seeds, for instance, like over here, adequate supply of boron and not having boron adequate supply. And if you see on this table for different crops, and we have the source over there, the difference in the length of the pollinic tube by having and not having adequate supply of boron, and for sure that's going to impact on the yield set for different crops. So that's another key role of boron in plants. Another one is related with the production of auxin, which is a hormone. And in this graphic, just to make sure what I'm showing here in the y-axis is not exactly the auxin production, it is the enzyme that's going to oxidize the hormone. So to try to explain this graph really briefly, like the green line show here, that when you have an adequate supply of boron, we don't have too much of that enzyme being produced. In other words, we are not going to suppress the production of this hormone, right? And then when you see this line, the red line, it shows when we don't have adequate supply of boron. And when that happens, you see a lot of that enzyme being produced, meaning if you don't have enough boron, you start suppressing the production of this hormone. And here, at this point, this is when we start adding boron in that environment where we didn't have boron. And you see the production of that enzyme decreases substantially, meaning we will, by not having boron, we are suppressing that hormone. So by supplying the adequate amount of boron, we'll make sure, and we know the auxin is responsible for the growth of roots, the pods and all that. So everything is related from the production of auxin and how the root system will develop. So that's on plant. We could spend at least an hour talk about the role of boron in plants for the physiological point of view, but that's not the focus here. So a little bit on the plants, the role it plays on plants, and now seeing boron in soils, right? Usually, we start like that. For soils that are low pH soils, there is usually a good relationship between low pH soils and low boron content in the soils. Because usually when you have a low pH soil, it means you have had a lot of precipitation. So everything that's leachable, such as bases and boron is readily leachable, will be leached, meaning you're going to have a low content of those leachable minerals, such as boron. So usually there's a good correlation between low pH and low boron content. And usually it's like phosphorus and potassium. Like you guys, for those that are agronomists like I am, usually there's no soil testing for nitrogen, right? We know usually we apply nitrogen based on the crop demand. But for phosphorus, potassium, those type of nutrients, we do rely on soil analysis to let us know if we need and how much we need to apply of those nutrients. And for boron, it's just like that. And usually the threshold for boron for most soils and most crops is 0.5 ppm boron in soil solution. Meaning that if I take my soil and I run the analysis and the boron level is 1 ppm, no need to apply boron, most likely, in most of the cases. But when it goes below 0.5 ppm, the likelihood for getting a response of applying a boron fertilizer is really high. So we usually 0.5 ppm is the